So one of the challenges that we have with digital, it's a huge opportunity, but it's hard, right? It's hard. It's very complicated. And so one of the things that, this explosion of content and technologies and just what do we do across this universe of digital is difficult. It's kind of the same thing that happens for we as consumers is there's so much clutter coming at us. How do we handle it? Well, as marketers, you have all these opportunities and options and new digital techniques and tactics exploding all the time, but what do we do? What works? What doesn't work? That's one of the difficult things that we as marketers need to understand in terms of trying to develop the appropriate strategies. This is an example of kind of that difficulty, and part of the difficulty is in the complexity. This looks at some of the digital tactics. This is a digital marketing map, and look at the interplay of how some of these tactics play together. You're probably familiar with many of these companies and tools and techniques here. But the interplay and how they interact with each other and which ones you start, which ones finish, how do you sequence it, it's really, really difficult. So what do you do as a marketer? This is another complexity chart. It just shows the explosion of tools and tools we have available for us to achieve our marketing objectives. So take a look quickly and see which some of these companies that you're familiar with and if you've used them before, etc. But it kind of gives a good overview of the universe of marketing tools available that are really digital and technology driven. Okay, which digital tools are popular? Which digital tools are people using really more? So content marketing is really at the top, and it's been at the top for a couple years, that companies are really embracing content marketing as a way to connect and engage with their consumers. And so especially in B2B content marketing is really big, but you can see this is just a list of some of the top digital marketing techniques that are being used in 2017. So we already understand the importance of digital and digital strategy. So one of the challenges that's interesting is, this was from another survey. It says, does your organization have a clearly defined digital strategy? And so the percentage of people saying no, they don't have a clearly defined strategy is almost remarkable in this day and age, right? So if we talk about what is our strategy, is we have to allocate our resources. Well, we have to have a clearly defined strategy in order to allocate our resources effectively. So these kind of stats always blow me away, that these companies, half the companies say that they don't have a digital strategy. That's almost remarkable, and it's kind of a sad state of affairs. And so again, it might be underreported or whatever, but even directionally, this is somewhat disturbing that digital isn't really defined as a strategy for most organizations. Just another quick kind of snapshot from a statistics standpoint in terms of this just shows kind of what's the volume and what's happening online in a 60-second snapshot. And if you kind of take a look at this in a little bit more detail, you'll see it's kind of amazing, some of the volume of transactions and volume of interactions that are occurring in just a 60-second time frame. This is another data source of sort of the same take in terms of what happens in just 1 minute. Again, take a look at here and you can see that kind of volume of transactions, interactions, etc., depending on the platform or tool that we're talking about here. One evidence of the impact of digital is the switch from retail in store to retail e-commerce or buying online. And we reach that inflection point where over 50% of sales are happening in non-store. So that has huge behavioral implications across the board, and it's something that we as marketers or people that are executive management of companies is something they have to address and deal with. Brands are really becoming more and more digital, and they have to, right? Because the time spent with people's interaction with certain types of media is changing, and the ad spend in terms of the money shifting to where the people are. So where is the money shifting? And this shows a good example of the time spent in mobile, for instance, is growing a lot, and actually you're seeing a lot more dollars and advertising spend shifted towards that mobile channel. So look, we spend average adult spends a lot of time online, and a lot of that time online has shifted to mobile. And as a result of that, the spend has shifted too, because advertisers know they need to connect where people are and influence them at that right time and right place. And that right time and right place is on mobile devices. A lot of times we'll throw out these blanket statistics in terms of everyone shifting to mobile, but you need to be careful because different demographics, different age groups, for example, their shift might be slower or not happening as aggressively in terms of other age groups. So we need to pay attention to that usage and make sure that we're reaching people in that right place, and we make sure that we're using the right platforms. So this is just looking at desktop, smartphone, smart web, tablet, etc., where people are consuming. And it sort of makes sense, right, in terms of that adoption of technology and where people are comfortable with particular technologies. As marketers, as we're developing our tactical plan going forward, we have to pay attention to some key elements, right? Digital has overtaken TV, right? So before, I'd throw a lot of money in terms of TV. TV still has a time and place, etc. But we need to understand and invest in digital as a platform. Mobile, we need to make sure mobile has some of our attention. We need to allocate resources to mobile. And just, Google, Facebook, we know that, right? They're the big players. We have to make sure that we're playing and understanding our role or the potential role of those two platforms for us to be successful from a digital strategy. If you want to take a look, there's a study that was done by Bain & Company and Google, Mogul Marketing, Don't Miss the Moment. It's really, for those of you who are interested more in mobile, this might be something you might want to take a look at. It provides a really good overview. So again, some additional homework if you want, really. So really, your choice. So digital has really changed how we have to think about marketing and approach marketing. If you look about this, really the connection we were looking at is terms of like at home or at work. And now it's kind of that always on world, right? With digital, we can connect with people at all times and always, and through multiple devices. So we need to understand where those interaction points are and what the opportunities are to communicate that value to the consumer. And digital has kind of changed the whole game. The challenge we have as marketers is we really have to take an approach in terms of integrated marketing communication and looking at digital as an option, but really traditional marketing isn't going away, and there's still a role in place for some of the things that we've done traditionally in marketing to really create that relationship and connect with the consumer. But some of the traditional marketing techniques has limitations, and digital addresses some of these, but we just need to be aware of what's the role and what are the opportunities and trade-offs that we need to make in terms of allocating our dollars, in terms of which tactic and technique and platform. So, one of the things that is a good way to look at this is really digital as a complement or replace traditional, but it's like, how do they work together? And so, some of the shortcomings that existed in traditional, digital has done a good job in terms of filling those gaps, but you need to look at it holistically, right? So like, remember back to that first thing we talked about in the beginning, is that digital is now that umbrella. That might be one way that you can look at it, but look at what the role is that digital plays and how it can address some of the objectives that you're trying to achieve. One of the unique trade-offs that digital has in terms of traditional versus traditional media is the ability to test, right? You can offer a low-cost solution and test different messaging, different creative, etc. with digital. That gives you great insight, and you can do that cheaper and quicker with digital than you can with traditional. You can see really, follow the dollars, right? You always want to follow the dollars. And where the dollars are going, you can see that digital and the popularity of digital is the money that are from other traditional marketing vehicles are really shifting to digital. And one of the reasons is that, the flexibility, achieving objectives, and the results that it's providing. So you can see over time and the projections going forward that more and more money is shifting to digital. People kind of throw out that what would happen if, and so some people have thrown out in the past, like, what would happen if we shifted all our money to digital? What would happen? What would be the trade-off, right? What would we be gaining? What would we be losing? So one thing that might make sense is that there's different companies that actually put out different campaigns and tactics and things companies are doing. And one of those companies is Digiday, and you can get on their newsletter or they'll feed different things that they're doing. And so digiday.com might be a good resource for you to take a look at what other companies are doing. And that's kind of that benchmarking component and trying to understand best practice benchmarking. What are other companies doing? Did it work for them? Why? How? What did they do? That's always a great thing for you to understand and investigate in developing your marketing strategy going forward.